While we're probably not getting a brand new Azeroth with a Cataclysm style just complete revamp right after Dragonflight, Blizzard has actually been making a ton of small updates under the radar that a lot of people missed. We got random, new, unrelated Pandaren animations that were quite recently added. We got a new Dwarf God model. We got new buildings. We got new assets constantly being created, constantly being added one by one, kind of behind the scenes. With Dragonflight, a lot of iconic characters got new models such as the Centaur, the Gnolls. All of these could realistically hint at a soft revamp happening over time, which could include some significant changes, quite akin to the recent Heritage questlines. We could get Gnomeregan, Gilneas back, the Night Elves could finally get a new city. Furthermore, with the continuation of Dragon Riding, we could get some significant updates to the terrain of all of Azeroth. So, what are all these hints, and is Blizzard really doing a soft revamp right under our noses? The coolest thing about MMORPGs is that you start as a level 1 and you constantly move forward, which in itself is an amazing feeling. Now, this game, Hero Wars, is the perfect embodiment of just that, as whatever you do, you're moving forward and you're constantly getting better. Hero Wars is made just right for any MMORPG player. It's pretty straightforward. You choose 5 heroes, combine them with the best strategy to fight in the campaign. You can also compete in the arena, take on other players in PvP, which makes it even more exciting. Best of all, the game is just completely free, without ads. You can actually progress without having to pay to win. There are so many heroes, abilities, and strategies you can choose from that the options are quite literally endless, but some work, some don't, which makes this quite a challenge that you learn on the fly. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot, here's a question for you. Where can you get 30k coins, 600 emeralds, and 5 awesome heroes to dominate Hero Wars right away? The answer is my link in the description below, so play Hero Wars now. This has been a super popular topic, a super popular request. In my opinion, this might be like the most requested features of all the WoW players. Everyone is talking about it. I mean, I've talked about it a million times. I don't want to beat the topic into the ground with the same information, but we actually have a ton of new evidence all these months later since I've covered the world revamps last. In fact, Blizzard has really silently been working under the radar, and a lot of people actually missed that they started updating a ton of features one by one, which I honestly think might be a part of an overarching revamp plan that has been unannounced at this point. Personally, I don't really think we're set for another really huge Cataclysm style, just huge world revamp update. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm not super optimistic that they're going to just restructure the entirety of Azeroth right after Dragonflight. While the WoW team did expand, they started working a lot more seriously, as you might have seen with the recent patch release dates. A world revamp is just so much work. In fact, Blizzard kinda said that this was the biggest undertaking they had ever done back in Cataclysm. Also, important to notice that at the time of Cataclysm, WoW was at its peak with 12 million active players, so financially their budget was definitely a lot more robust, and it was really just a completely different time. However, I'm not saying it won't happen, I just think it is going to be a soft, gradual type revamp where they're going to add features one by one, where eventually we might break free from a lot of these zones stuck in time, because there are just so many of them. I mean, there could be an entire video just listing all these zones stuck in time. One of the biggest hints is that we got a really mysterious and telling tweet from a senior quest designer for WoW recently that said, opens up Eastern Kingdoms in DevTool. At the time, this brought quite a bit of hype. We thought this was like the confirmation from Blizzard, like they were sort of winking at us, but they later clarified that she makes quests, so not new terrain or models, and with the recent updates, this was almost certainly related to the recent Human Heritage questline. However, I think this is something that you guys have played through but might not have noticed that it could be a part of this soft revamp, and those are the 2 Heritage questlines we had received. Not only did we get new and updated armor, but Blizzard finally, after so many years, started tying up some loose ends. I mean, realistically, in WoW there are a million loose ends, but this is a pretty good start. We got a significant resolution of the Defiance Brotherhood lore, some Stormwind politics, we learned a lot about the Orcish clans and how they have been doing all these years, as well as Orc leadership. Then another big hint that probably flew past you is that Blizzard literally started introducing and making new models, new animations, new buildings, and they have been adding them non-stop, pretty much under the radar. This has been sort of a hidden gem, but they more than likely added this at some point during Dragonflight. Blizzard added new animations to the Pandaren that look a lot more natural, such as leaning, talking, sitting. very cool looking animations as well. I mean, keep in mind, we had about actual 0 Pandaren related questlines for them to add this, which means that this could be a part of the big plan that is slowly being implemented. Then Blizzard actually updated the Dwarf Guard model, also unrelated to what is going on. I mean, some people connected this to the recent Earth and Dwarf Titan lore, which of course could be realistic, but so far this seems to have been done on a whim. Another thing you might not have noticed, as this has been just features of the new expansion, and that is that a lot of old iconic minions in WoW have been updated as a part of Dragonflight. We got new updated Centaur models, Gnoll models that have been relevant pretty much since Warcraft 3. In the past few expansions, we got new Ogre models, we got a bunch of animal models, I mean ton of animal models in fact, and of course, Blizzard also worked constantly on new customization features for playable characters. If you might have noticed, every single small and big update we're getting something from like new eyes to new hairstyles to new colors. This all seems to be a part of a really soft and long revamp of the world. For example, even prior to Dragonflight release, we discovered a bunch of new, really cool looking human buildings. We got a ton of new Blood Elven structures, features, boats. All of these are of course tiny bits and pieces, items, buildings, but keep in mind, a lot of these can actually be used for the next expansion or next expansions. Just with the new human buildings, I mean, they could completely restructure a bunch of current human settlements. I mean, definitely not Stormwind, but a bunch of these human outposts could change within the matter of like a day if they just updated the buildings. Not only that, but these past few expansions, we've gotten a ton of new assets as well with completely rebuilt Stromgarde. I mean, at this point, what they have been doing for years, they really don't need to just remake the entire world. They already got a bunch of features, a lot of assets that they could just implement. I mean, keep in mind, some areas in Azeroth are really stuck in time, and when I say stuck in time, I really mean stuck in time. I mean, personally, I don't see continents such as Northern or Pandaria being updated in the near future, as they're not really relevant, but the Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor are the core of World of Warcraft. It is what all players see, and those updates from Cataclysm at this point are twice as old as the original zones, and some were not even updated, so some are 20 years old at this point. From a marketing perspective, this makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's really not a good look for someone in 2023, 2024 to start playing WoW to see what this game is, and then see assets that were made back in like 2003, especially with the competition these days. Furthermore, from a lore perspective, Blizzard has actually been very seriously updating the lore, and we know a bunch of zones changed. It is only a matter of time before it happens in the game. I mean, you can check out the full update videos I made for Kalimdor, Eastern Kingdoms, Northern, Pandaria. It's pretty much half an hour of content covering all the little bits and pieces, because realistically in game it should look completely different. Worst offenders are Orgrimmar and Stormwind. I mean, two main cities that look pretty lame compared to everything else, every big city Blizzard has been making these past years. Then we have Gnomeregan, just completely stuck in time, and the gnomes seem to have just been forgotten about and just stuck in this loop of retaking their home. We have Silvermoon that is still half destroyed. I mean, buildings look super outdated and very funny looking compared to the new Dragonflight Blood Elven assets. Even worse, the zone of Kotalas is not even seamless with the continent, but even there, in Shadowlands, Blizzard made a small questline to update Scourge activities in Kotalas, which of course could be a start. We know, for example, in the lore, Stromgarde is an actual living city now without the ward. Yet, in game, it is of course stuck in time. Undercity should look entirely different and might even be completely rebuilt. Also, what I'm talking about the Forsaken, Blizzard recently updated some assets to remove the essence of Sylvanas, which could also be a hint. Something could happen with Telemore all these years later, and with a piece that has been lasting for years. Even more interestingly, at the end of Shadowlands, Blizzard very heavily hinted that we could see the restoration of Gilneas as a possible questline, which really brings us to even more hints and how this revamp could be done. I mean, keep in mind, the recent two Heritage questlines introduced some new assets and updates for orcs and humans, which are the two core races. However, we got a dozen more, and these Heritage questlines could become a thing for every single race, which would be like mini revamps spread throughout multiple expansions. Before you say anything, I know we already got a bunch of Heritage stuff from BFA, but they could totally get new, race-specific questlines akin to this. Not only would this solve lore loose ends, but they could make new assets and some very serious changes to the capitals. I could totally see a Vorgen questline with Reclamation of Gilneas, or maybe Goblins taking back Kazan. We could get an updated Silvermoon this way, or the Draenei getting Exodar updated to the current standards. Of course, some of these would require quite quite a lot of content, but this isn't just my wishful thinking. I mean, we have a lot of other lore crumbs we could follow. For example, we know as recent as Dragonflight, Kalimdor was actually moved a bit east on the map. Although, keep in mind, Blizzard actually responded to this. They said this was mainly done by the art team. It's not some crazy conspiracy theory. However, they changed their philosophy quite a bit and started focusing on key features. For example, if we follow the Dragonflight roadmap, we know that they plan to eventually update the professions further, which could also be a part of this revamp. I mean, the revamp doesn't just have to be visual. However, in regards to visual, which of course are very important, we have the strongest hint so far, and that is dragon riding, which is a pretty significant feature of Dragonflight. They hinted at this in a pretty straightforward way, that they don't plan to abandon dragon riding after this expansion, like a lot of one-off expansion features. It just wouldn't make sense to just learn this new skill, get the dragons, and just forget it exists after the expansion. If we take this logic, they probably plan to introduce it to the entirety of Azeroth. The first big feature that required a world revamp for WoW was flying, which happened in Cataclysm. The second could definitely be dragon riding. Dragon riding wouldn't need such a major update, but they would need to 100% update some old zones. I mean, you literally can't even fly in Silvermoon or get it from other areas, which really is the most critical zone, but some terrain updates would also be needed for a lot of other areas. All this hints at a pretty significant swamp revamp that I have mentioned multiple times by now. Now, I'm not saying a Cataclysm thing couldn't happen. In my opinion, the most realistic factor could be Azeroth Awakening, which would be like the brand new Sundering. We even have a ton of setups for this to happen. For example, we got the time skip after Dragonflight, which is setting the perfect foundation so that the world just doesn't change overnight. Second, we had that part of the Dragonflight cinematic where Alexstrasza like literally raised an entire forest from a desert place with one breath, which could involve the dragon aspects getting stronger. Then we have the Seed of Teldrassil, which could introduce the Night Elven Heritage questline and the creation of their new home. Most importantly, a big part of WoW's core audience are the old hardcore players that abandoned the game, and I could totally see an expansion involving a revamp feature, getting old players purchasing the new expansion so they want to see what the old zones of Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor look like now. Most importantly, this could actually be quite realistic. I mean, a few months back, Blizzard significantly expanded their working team by acquiring a new studio, which means at this point they definitely have the power to make this happen. You can see this definitely with the way we have been getting new content for Dragonflight. So while I don't think we will get a huge Cataclysm revamp, we might get a soft revamp over time. Thank you for watching. Check out Ryzeltet, maybe the smartest old god ever, by clicking on the screen, and check out Doran's Academy for videos on real world history. See you next time.